take any daylight.
So it's
That's
the
awesome,
streaming.
thank you very
I don't-
much.
I need to get.
11 to 12:30, all right. I'll
Definitely-
let you know ahead of time.
Definitely
so-
nicer, Elaine, to get a bill one, when you see that $80 instead of almost $300.
Well, we're very hopeful that people will be less inclined to get these
Yeah.
Yeah,
if it's a more manageable amount and it's every month.
Yeah, we're live,
We'll watch our aging schedule and see
Live.
what
but
happens.
I need to do one
There's
more
the
thing.
And there's been a fair number signing up for the Eagle.
Some of
Yeah.
it comes from Port Baltimore. Some of it comes from the
There's
office.
the
well, I can't see how anybody would wanna complain about it, they can say it, to have to come up with $300 all at once compared to 80 and 80 or 100.
I need to come by and ask for the form
I don't
to
know
sign up
what's
for auto
happening
debit.
right
So
now.
I don't
It's
even
right
have
on
to
the
pay it.
calendar.
That's what I need, I'm gonna get one then, all
You
right.
better get one.
That would make me so happy.
I got it, my daughter wants to come up and do it too.
So if you
Yeah.
sign up for the automatic payment, do you still
guys aren't
get
going to
an
school
email saying what the amount was? Because that's the only
It
reason I don't
doesn't.
do automatic payment for a lot of things.
It doesn't change your billing at all.
Because then,
So
since it went
still
to,
get your
since it was
bill,
2 hours
still
per
get the
person,
bill.
and then it went to a
It'll
closure,
just-
they
it'll
didn't have, they're
say
gonna
on
fix it
there
tomorrow,
something
but
to the fact
they
that
didn't
it's
have,
Direct debit.
like a
direct
schedule.
debit.
Okay,
Yeah, it says, this is not,
Do
this is
not
not a bill.
pay.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Then I can
Mark
do
did.
that.
I
It'd be
actually,
easier. I just
I don't think you
always
can
like to
hear
see the
me.
bill.
Yeah. And we send the
Well, you don't trust them?
we send the file to the bank 2 business days before the payments are done. So even if you had a question about your bill, you still have about 20-some days to look at your bill. And if you have an issue or
Schools are closed tomorrow.
no, my bill's way high, don't withdraw from my account,
Yeah.
we can stop at the time. Once it's beyond 2 days, the file's gone to the bank.
And my main thing is just seeing if it lines up with past, just so I know.
Okay. We're having some technical difficulty because we're doing a presentation with Servine first, is regarding that insurance for water leaks, and my microphone on Google Meets was not working, so she is sending me a Teams link here directly. So as soon as I get this working, then I would suggest starting the meeting.
Okay.
I apologize. Today is not my day, apparently.
Guess we would come up here and watch the football games.
While we're waiting, is there like any update on the OPT building?
I like it.
Yeah, 98-inch TV.
Larry, right back to you.
I got one that size in my bedroom. Can't sleep in it.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, you can, and you can hear me?
I can't hear you there, but I,
Um,
there is a dial-in number too
Yeah.
that might work on that team link.
I'm not a big fan of Microsoft Teams.
rejoin.
Once we're back offline, I'll tell you what Liz had to say about Philippines.
Oh my gosh, why is the phone audio not working? What is happening? There we go. Oh my gosh. Wait now.
tone. Please record your name and then press pound.
City of Frostburg.
You are now joining the meeting.
Good?
Can you hear us now, Ashley?
I can hear you now.
Okay. If you would just bear with us for 1 minute while we, the mayor calls the meeting to order, and then we'll turn it over to you. Okay, thank you.
Meeting of the City of
You're
Frostburg is
welcome.
called to order. We'll take the roll.
Commissioner Donnie Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Nina Forsyth.
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Grove.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Ritchie.
Here.
Mayor Todd Logston.
Present. All right, moving on then to the first item on the agenda, special presentation for the proposal for leak adjustment insurance from Surfline.
Thanks, everyone, for having me here this afternoon and letting me join virtually. I'm glad you all can hear me now. Well, I'm going to share my screen just to follow along. I know Elizabeth has shared some of the information with you. I can kind of walk you through our program, how we would work with the city, and then answer any questions that you all as the group may have. Again, my name's Ashley Shaworski, and I do represent Surfline. It is our leak adjustment program. Our program here, we are endorsed by the National Rural Water Association, but also in Maryland by the Maryland Rural Water, as well as we're partnered with the Maryland Municipal League as well. But the company I do work for is called HomeServe, and we administer this program. And I'm not too far from you. I'm just right up in Pittsburgh, so not too far of a drive there to Frostburg. Maybe not at this time of the year with the snow. But really, to give you a little background about our program is what it really does is it really helps to enhance and replace your current leak adjustment process and policy. We know the city's currently trying to help out where they can, providing adjustments, but that really does take up staff time, but also you're writing off dollars for water that you were already treating and distributing to your customers. We know you try to help when you can, but we know cities don't have unlimited budgets. So what this program really can do is kind of take the burden away from the staff from having to make those calls on those adjustments and handle those adjustments, freeing up their time, but also allow the city to recapture any revenue that you may be writing off as a loss currently when you do those adjustments and help out the residents there. So the way that our program would work is we would really create a new leak adjustment policy for the city. And the city does choose a coverage limit to make available to your residents there. So we have a $500 limit, a $1,000 limit, and a $2,500 limit. And you would choose to make one of those options available to your water and sewer customers. It doesn't mean if you pick one, you're stuck with it forever. We can always adjust as we go, but you do start off by choosing that limit that you think would be the best for your residents there. The way that our policy would work is the resident would be able to file an adjustment with us once every 12 months. In order to qualify for that adjustment, their bill does have to be 2 times their average bill. So just for example, if their bill's typically $50, it does have to be $100 or greater to qualify for an adjustment. But we pay anything over the average or anything over the $50. That qualifier of the 2 times is just so they don't waste their one time a year, on a $5 overage. We want to make sure that it's something that's worth it for that resident. What's also nice about our program is we do make that adjustment over 2 billing cycles. Because we know a lot of times a resident doesn't even realize they have a leak, especially if it's something like a running toilet or a leaking faucet, until they get that bill in the mail, and it's already starting to calculate for that next cycle. So we do make that adjustment for their 2 highest billing cycles. We also do require some type of proof that they got their leak taken care of, because we don't want them to continually waste your water. So it could be something as easy as a receipt from a local hardware store that they maybe got a flapper for a toilet, or if it's something a little bit more detailed, an invoice from a local plumber. because we want them, their usage to go back to normal and not to continue to have that high water and or sewer bill. And really to qualify for an adjustment, that resident, it just has to be a leak. So it can't be, I left my water running, I filled a pool, something like that. It has to be an actual issue or an actual leak. And as I mentioned, the city would choose an option to make available to their residents. We have the $500 per occurrence, which would be an adjustment for both their high water and sewer bill, up to the $2,500 amount. So the prices are between $1.55 and $2.05 per month, depending on that choice that you would make available to the residents. And this program is actually an insurance policy for the city, where we insure the city for their lost water, and homeowners are claimants on the policy. And the reason why it is set up like that is because the policy is in your name, but the homeowners are claimants or your customers are claimants. It allows them to file a claim directly with us, freeing up your staff time from having to deal with those calls. But since the policy is in the city's name, it allows us to pay the loss or the amount for the high water and sewer bill directly to the city, so that you can credit their water and sewer bill to ensure they're actually using that money to pay for their bill, and something not a little bit more fun. So the way that this program would be implemented is it's really implemented through a one-time program announcement, and this is done through a bill insert. And it lets the customers there know that you are updating your leak adjustment policy, but we are administering it. So this is the new leak adjustment policy. It includes the date that this policy would go into effect, and that is a date that the city chooses. So if you decided today you wanted to move forward with this, but you wanted it to go into effect next July, that's no problem. We just work backwards from that. So you choose the date that it would start. We include the announcements about the program at least 30 days prior to the policy going into effect, but we can do longer, 60 days, 90 days, whatever is the best choice for you. And it really lets your residents there know all the details about this new leak adjustment policy, how it works, how to file a claim, and lets them know the cost associated with it, the date that it would go into effect, but also lets them give us a call or fill out a web form to decline the coverage before anything does show up on their water and or sewer bill. So this protection is billed as a separate line item on your resident's water bill, with the freedom to decline at any time. We do give them that runway before, so they can give us a call, inquire about the program, ask questions before anything does show up on that bill as that line item. But if they don't do it before it goes into effect, that doesn't mean you're stuck with us forever. They can give us a call at any time and get out of the program. But we do see on average with our partners about 94% of customers do choose to remain enrolled in the coverage because it is so affordable, $1 or $2 per month, but it can save them that huge water and or sewer bill. In this program, there's really one mailing sent for the entirety of the program, really just announcing it. We handle any cost associated with that bill insert, whether printing, the customization, any additional postage, we would take care of that. And then typically it just lives somewhere, in the city ordinances that this is your new leak adjustment policy. But here at Home Serve and Serve-Line, we are administering that for you, and all the details how to file that claim. So then when your water or sewer customers do have an issue with a high water bill, they would call us directly. We would gather their information, make sure they got their issue taken care of. We would figure out what their average bill is. We tell them to pay their average, and then we issue the amount for the overage directly to your billing staff there so that they can credit their account. And we do know you're doing, you're helping your residents now with an adjustment, but this kind of enhances that. So we do see an increased customer service where your residents are getting a little bit more forgiveness at least once a year. But it's taking that burden off away from the city, both financially and time-wise, from having to handle those. And I know that's kind of high level or a lot of information, but if the group has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer those for you.
So I have a question. How does the company, or if this would be on us, how would we go about proving that? So if someone makes a claim, I have a leak, how do we prove that it's a leak and not just overuse. So say a household uses, I don't know, 2,500 gallons of water a month on average, and they get a bill in June that's for 5,000 or 6,000, and they say, well, I had a leaking faucet or leaking toilet. How do we prove that they didn't just top off their pool? And then somebody goes to, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it is kind of on the honor system. That's why we do require some kind of proof. But we do know sometimes the homeowner will go to that hardware store and buy a part with a receipt and then
Right.
save that money. So we do know that. We can kind of see sometimes on trends, if it's every June, it kind of starts to, put those pieces together. But we don't send out an adjuster or anything like that.
Okay.
It is really on that honor system.
So yeah, like I said, if a homeowner, buys a $20 toilet clapper to get out of a $100 water bill, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Do you handle multifamily properties differently? Like if, for example, if the landowner covers the water for all of the renters?
Yeah, so we do have a different rate structure. So we would work with your utility staff there to figure out, we could make it available just for residential. We could do residential with multifamily residential. We can do light commercial too. There is a slightly different structure for pricing structure depending on what type of property it is, but it is up to the city who you want to make it available to. I know most of the people I start with, they may start with residential and then sometimes add commercial later. But yes, we do have a multifamily. It depends on if they have one master meter for everything, if they have individual meters. But in the full proposal, I know that I shared with Elizabeth, which I can also send over again. It kind of breaks down the different populations of people and the rates associated with that too.
Okay. Anything else?
So, the proposals attached to the agenda and the different rates, I think when we discussed this back in November or October, you wanted to have Ashley kind of just give an overview of the program, ask any questions, but this would be a longer process to enroll in because the city ordinances would need to change to reflect this leak adjustment, and you'd have to make decisions on the commercial and multifamily side. But
I was just going to share my screen really. I just pulled up the full proposal. But yeah, the residential rates, there's commercial single occupancy, commercial multi-occupancy rates, and then there's also, which was master meter, which is typically 1 meter with multi-residential properties that's $5 per unit. So we can do it whatever way that is best fit for the city. We have some that implement everything all at once, some that really focus on just the residential, single family, and then, or some that, dip their toes in the water with residential and slowly add maybe the commercial or the multi-habitational, really whatever is the best fit for you.
when Elaine and I discussed this with you a couple months ago, I think, if I recall correctly, the conversation then was to start with the residential and maintain our leak adjustment policy for the multifamily properties. But, that obviously doesn't have to be the case. And that was just a thought that was mentioned back then. But Elaine and Trevor would be looking for your consensus to start moving forward with implementation, if not today, in the next month, so that they can work with Michael to get to do ordinance changes, because July 1 of this year would be the ideal time.
That would be our target to get it implemented.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think we talked about, last time we talked about this, we did say starting with just strictly residential. I guess, is that, okay.
And Ashley, can you please confirm that it would only apply to the water portion of the bill and not the water and the sewer portion of the bill? Because our our sewer billing is linked to our water meter readings.
Yeah, so the rates that I gave you are for both their water and their sewer bill.
Water
So
and
we
sewer.
would make, because their sewer bill is directly correlated with water usage. So,
Okay.
they would get that forgiveness for both their water and their sewer bill.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for that clarification.
And Elaine did speak to two references that Ashley provided, and I think you received in Maryland, and received very good feedback from both.
Yeah, they both had very positive feedback, very consistent comments, and very complimentary of how efficient it was working with the
And they
company.
got a lot of buy-in from,
They never had a previous leak adjustment
Oh.
policy for their customers, but they just had glowing comments.
for those residents who don't opt in, are they on our old leak adjustment policy or no policy at all?
My recommendation would be that there would be no other option for residential
Okay.
customers because that just complicates
It sure
things.
does.
In my recommendation, it would be, this is the option for residential, and if you choose to decline this, then you have no other adjustment available.
And honestly, that's why our program is set up the way that it is because we are replacing your current policy. So your policy typically does go away. So that's why we send that announcement letting your residents know this is replacing anything you're currently doing. So this is the new leak adjustment policy. But now they do still have the option to decline before it shows up on their bill. But we do enroll everyone because everyone has something now. So we want to make sure there's that continuous, everyone has something, but they can get out of it if they want.
And is that something that's done, on an annual basis? Maybe there could be something sent to customers to say, hey, this is a reminder you still have this policy. Do you want to stay in or not? Or I guess it would be on us to do it whenever property changes hands, if somebody buys a house or something. But is that something like you
Correct.
send out to your customers annually?
Yeah.
Every July you have the option to drop out of this again, or just a reminder that it's still here.
Yeah, so we can do that. A lot of our partners do just do the one-time announcement, but then sometimes we will share information for you, like for a new resident sign-up, or if there's other ways you get word out to residents as well. Like a lot of people will share social media posts, like a everyone's getting their news from Facebook nowadays. They'll put it on there. We can also customize a reminder insert, every so often. You do have these benefits, things like that. So yeah, we can provide you with whatever tools you would like to get that word out to your residents.
Do residents pick the amount of coverage they want? No?
So the city would choose one amount for all your customers. It is an insurance policy, so we typically, if any insurance policy is cancelable by you at any time, but we can, it's typically, an annual premium and policy. So we do have some of our partners, that may start with the middle and at the renewal time kind of look at the claims history, where are they falling? Is the 1,000 enough? Should we bump it up to 2,500? Could we bump it down? You can kind of do it like that. Or look at some of the adjustments that you're currently making and make that best idea, what that best idea is for your resident.
Okay.
Historically, has there been much change in the rates from year to year for your customers?
So there hasn't been. I know we acquired Servline back in 2020, and these have been our rates since then. So there hasn't been. We do look at that. We actually had a utility in Ohio that we lowered rates in year 2 because, they provided us some data with their leak adjustment policy. It, must have been a really bad year the year before, so then the next year wasn't that bad, so we were able to lower it a couple cents. But yeah, I haven't seen much increase. I think one of our partners, I know El Paso did get an increase, I believe, but they were a lot larger and they had that huge freeze that really affected their rates. Pretty much every every resident in their city had a leak one year, but it only went up by a couple of cents, I believe. So, but yeah, I do think I think that was, and I could be wrong about that, but I don't think there hasn't been much changes. These have been the rates since we began offering it, based on some certain things, like where your meter is located, number of connections, things like that, but have been the rates since we began offering the program.
Okay. Would we be able to, when we choose our rate, when the city chooses our rate, and that's what we go with, is it possible to choose one rate for residential customers and another rate for commercial? So for example,
It is.
okay, because I can't imagine there's going to be any single-family residence in town that's going to even come close to the 500. But commercial properties, there certainly could be that would go over that. So like we could do a 500 for residential and 1,000 for commercial.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other thing that I can also, that I did not mention is those rates that are in there. Those are the rates that we charge. So like, for example, the 1,000 is $1.70. We have some of our partners that do add $2 maybe on to the bill and keep the additional as a revenue or like an admin fee. So we will only invoice you for the premium amount.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ashley, and either
You're welcome.
Elaine or Trevor or I will be in touch with you soon.
Perfect. And then the only other thing that I was just going to mention, Elizabeth, is there's with this, because there is no an insurance policy, what we do is we actually just have you sign off on your selection. So there's no agreement for the program. So we just have you pick your choices. And then what we do is, I know Elizabeth mentioned like a July date was what you were probably looking for it to potentially go into effect. We would probably need, for that July effective date, we probably would have those letters go out in your May bill or June bill, one of those two. So we probably need everything customized by about April, just to give you a timeline.
Okay.
But what we do is, if you decided to move forward, we would just need to know, do you want residential or commercial or just residential, the coverage limit that you're looking for, and that tentative start date, and then we have you sign off on those selections, and then we begin working to get everything customized to get out the door, announcing the program, and then we just, right before we send those out, we actually have you reconfirm it to make sure nothing changed along the way, and actually then bind the insurance policy with those selections. So just to give you an idea of what that process looks like.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, I
There's nothing
appreciate everyone's time there today. I appreciate you allowing me to join, and if you have any questions, give me a call, send me an email, whatever's easier for the group.
Thanks a lot, Ashley. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're probably right, Adam. I think better safe than sorry. 1,000 maybe.
Yeah, for just 15 more cents, it goes
Yeah.
from 500 to 1,000.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Do you have some average leak numbers, Trevor?
So at the current rates, 28,000 gallons, water and sewer would be $504.28. So they'd have to be above, or they'd have to get forgiveness for 28,000 gallons to use the $500.
28,000 gallons.
Yeah,
To get above the 500.
Is that factoring in water and sewer or just water?
that's water and sewer below the 50,000 gallon rate. And
That's a lot of
50,000
water in a
gallons
month.
is $900,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 1,000 gallons a day.
which we have seen toilets at 3,000 or 4,000 gallons a day. But oftentimes that's in an apartment. Usually it's not single unit, but sometimes it is.
Okay.
And now that we're going monthly instead of quarterly,
Mhm.
the leak adjustment amounts should be shrinking,
Yeah.
but. So like last year, our total leak adjustment dollars, we were about $28,000. Is what the city
Mhm.
concession that was made, water and sewer together.
For the whole year, 28,000.
What's the cost of this per month? $2?
$1.50, $1.75.
$1.70.
For residential customers, for insurance of $1,000 is $1.70. For multiple, like the hotel would be $9.50.
That's if everybody, well, so they collect $16,000 if everybody bought it.
And if nobody used it, so minus
Yeah,
the
that's-
20, minus the 28 we paid out.
Oh, they're gonna do it.
But the customer would be absorbing the full cost.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is good for your water fund, helps pay for the additional postage for monthly billing, and then
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as long as there's an opt-out that people, we can tell people, well, you don't have to do it if you don't want.
It's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
It seemed to be kinda
Sending
silly
out
not to do it
multiple
for our first
notifications
quote 70.
is not a good idea, because now that we're doing all the billing at once,
Mhm.
and Trevor can attest to this, the speed of the mailing
Mhm.
slows down significantly when there's an insert. What did you say it is? How many pieces per hour?
780 when there's any insert, and then when it's just the bill, it's at 3,000 pages. an hour.
So maybe we need to then, because there are times when we have inserts anyway,
Yes.
so,
But that's why, like, if we make the initial information available as an insert
Mhm.
prior to enrollment,
So-
then limit it to property transfers as far as getting the complete details. And then we can always, put on the webpage, put on Facebook, put a one-line thing, please review your
oh, yeah,
line.
yeah, that's what I meant. I
Rather
didn't,
than doing like the same mailing every year.
oh, no, right, yeah, that's what I meant. There just needs
Okay.
to be some kind of notice, even if
Right.
it's just an asterisk on the bill that says, just a
Right.
reminder about this insurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
can
if
be
they
right
don't
on the bill.
reply, then they'll be automatically.
Right, it's an opt-out.
Yeah, okay.
And both of the references that I spoke to were very complimentary about how easy it was for their staff just to, when people call, just refer them to Surfline. You don't have to explain things, you don't need to be the middleman. And they said everyone has just been very helpful. So from our perspective, it will save the administrative
Yeah.
time and effort of explaining leak adjustments, managing them, the documents, the verification, bill adjustments.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Do we want to go ahead and make a decision on that now, or?
Like, when we're gonna start?
We would have to get we would have to get the ordinance language updated
Okay.
with Michael.
I think that can be happening in conjunction with the enrollment. I think, do you want Elaine and Trevor to kind of run some numbers on what it would look like? Do you think, like, people are gonna be interested in that multifamily insurance at that rate? Or do you wanna keep the cities, I think that's the big decision for us to move forward at this point, is that the multifamily and commercial rate is much higher than the single-family residential. So, do you want to move in that direction, or do you want to just stick with residential for right now? I think that's the big direction that staff needs to coordinate.
I'll just stick with that and see if I can get any feedback from anybody. That, if they see that people are asking about it, we can always add it later.
Yeah, and then we can have time to kind of gauge how much interest there is. I mean, like she said, the average is, what'd she say, 94% of people that, 90-something% of people that use it, or that buy into it. So if we have numbers that are significantly different than that,
90% of those 94% don't even look at the bill.
don't even know.
Yeah.
Well, your bill fluctuates enough month to month anyway, you won't even notice it.
Right.
$1.70.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, go ahead and run some number. I mean, is the 1,000, we good with the 1,000 for
Yeah,
residential?
I think so, yeah.
All right, let's see what we can come up with for that, but we can get Michael started on language probably, even if we don't adopt it right away, we can get him going on it. You okay?
Yeah,
Oh.
sorry, I'm just reading this, thinking.
I could see a lot more pushback from multi-unit buildings, if they fail to opt out, and then they see that charge per unit on their bill, as opposed to a single family, they didn't pay any attention to the insert, they failed to opt out, so they get an extra $1.70 on their bill, compared to someone who has.
Yeah, like Frostburg Heights, if you went with $1,000 on the multifamily, that would be $475 a month additional.
Well, that would be like Frost Village, there's 100 units.
$475.
It's like,
That's salty.
So they'll be on the old leak adjustment policy? Or,
That's what was discussed
because they,
previously.
they don't have like a choice to opt in.
yeah, do you want to maintain it for those others?
Let's, maintain the old policy. We'll start this with just single-family residential and maintain the old policy, the current policy for everyone else.
Yeah, just another example of like leak adjustment nightmare. Several years ago, there was a leak at the plaza, new owners, and you remember this.
Yes.
And the owners of the plaza, the management, didn't seem to fully grasp that their water meter is out in the parking lot here, and they have hundreds of feet of water line before it entered into the building. So they kept hiring plumbers to look for the leak, but they were only looking for the leak within the building. And so it was 6 months of a growing water bill through the pandemic, like no one was there, and their water bill was $18,000 one month, and just crazy. Lo and behold, after I offered to send a leak detection company out, they hired their own, and they found it under the giant puddle behind the building.
Oh, interesting.
Last place I looked.
And so, that all being said, we weren't in a position, they didn't want to pay their water bill, but the hospital is a tenant, So, the city being in control of that leak adjustment and that negotiation helped maintain relationships. Whereas if you give up that control, in that setting, things could have gone maybe sideways. That was very unique. Never experienced anything quite like that one before, but
We tried to tell them.
I was very nice and didn't command much respect from the owner. Michael Cohen sends a not so nice email, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, what can we do to make this right?"
It always helps to have a Michael Cohen in your back pocket.
Oh my gosh. So much for being nice. But anyway, okay. So I think the direction is we'll look at just residential for right now.
I
Keep
agree.
$1,000. Keep the rest the leak policy for the other types of properties. Okay.
Agreed.
Very well.
Moving on.
Thank you.
All right. All right, a couple more things from finance. Item 4A, adjustments to the bank accounts.
So right now, Elizabeth and I are the designated signers on all the city accounts. With Elizabeth's resignation from the city, we will need to establish by resolution at least one person to be an authorized signer. Because at the bank, we have a 2-signature requirement. There are many things that require multiple signatures. So, in the meantime, my recommendation would be to add the mayor as one signature. And if we wanted to add a second as a backup, but Hayden as acting city administrator could be a second. And then when a new city administrator is hired, would be one option for your consideration.
So then there'll
Sounds
be
good,
3.
It's fine with me.
So we would have 3, 2 as a minimum.
And we have to have at least 2.
We have to
Yeah.
have at least 2. And like if I'm gonna make a wire transfer for Somerset Trust, we have to have at least 2. The checking account is 2 signature requirement.
Yeah, I think that was good.
Yep.
Piece of cake. Next, budget.
So, as we have done every other year, we look at the budget mid-year and make some recommended budget adjustments through amendments. The amendments that are for your consideration this month, I'll put them in a couple general categories. We have adjustments to property insurance. We have appraisals done on many of the properties last spring. As you'll recall, as a result of those appraisals, our building values went up, premiums have gone up. So many of the property insurance accounts are already over budget for the year. So we want to do amendments that would bring the approved expense line items, within what we've already paid. We will continue to incur some new expenses, so as buildings are completed, for instance, we have to, pay additional mid-year premiums, as equipment's purchased, things like that. So I've included proposed amendments to take care of known and expected insurance expense adjustments. There have been significant changes in project timelines, particularly in the sewer fund with the CSO projects, from where we anticipated projects would be when we did the budget planning last spring to where we are now. Also, when we did the original budget in the corporate fund, we had budgeted for roundabout construction to begin in this fiscal year, which obviously is not going to happen. So those are some of the bigger line items that you see reflected as adjustments both on the revenue side and the expense side. For example, the roundabout shows up in the corporate fund under project reimbursements on the revenue, and it was under capital outlay, the administrative, part of the expenses. We also did many revisions to the use of the ARPA funds from last year's budget planning to the latest projects approved last month. So those items are reflected in the appropriate line items. For the expense side, the revenue is reflected as special revenue in the funds. So for example, we removed all ARPA funding for this fiscal year from the Piney Surcharge Fund, so you see that total amount coming down. In this sewer fund, the ARPA change was due to the change in how much was being allocated to CSO Phase 10A, so it went from 800,000 down to about 606,000. So those are many of the adjustments, just to kind of put them in a broad category. We have also had some changes in the pension expense. So when the pension expense is budgeted each year, we tie that generally as a percentage of salaries, and the amount was based on the percentage of employer contribution from the prior year. When we actually got the annual invoice in December, the city's contribution percentage had increased. So in some of the departments, that pension expense was not significant. On the positive side, the certified officers and LEOPS, the initial billing for that, because we had some carryover credit from the transfer of those officers, that expense line item came down significantly. We are only billed once a year for the city's contribution to the pension. So that's one item of savings. So if you have any particular questions on any of the amendments that are recommended, I'd be happy to address those. I did provide just a condensed summary by department and fund, which is maybe easier to digest than the line-by-line details. So you can see in total, for the corporate fund, revenues and expenses decreasing. In the water fund, there was a minimal change, increasing the overall budget. Sewer, again, is where you see the biggest change, mainly within the CSO line. And garbage, again, it's a minimal change. So overall, total expenses for the city with the amendments would come down to just over 15 million as opposed to 18.9 million. Again, biggest changes in projects. We would, again, need to do more budget amendments at the end of the fiscal year, again, because there's so much of this is fluid. these would be the amendments that I would propose for your consideration at the mid-year point.
Seems pretty straightforward.
So that would be a resolution for your approval next week.
Okay. Next, change in the surcharge fund.
So the city, by resolution in 2011, established a target fund balance policy. And the fund balance policy was set to be 30 to 50% of operating expenses for all funds. In most cases, this, has been a reliable number to work within. And based on the results of the city's audit as of the end of June, looking at the unrestricted fund balance and our target right now, each of the funds, with the exception of the garbage fund, has an unrestricted, undesignated fund balance within that target range. Garbage fund still has a negative fund balance, so we will need to work on building some reserves in that area. For the water surcharge fund, however, as our operating expenses decline with the payment of debt, if you base your target fund balance on that 30 to 50% of expenses, in my opinion, you're creating a target fund balance that is really insufficient to cover any kind of major contingency that could come up. So, for example, annual expenses in fiscal year 24 were around $891,000. If you're saying your target fund balance is 30 to 50% of that, you're only looking to hold on to between $267,000 to $445,000. Hayden would probably attest, if there was a significant need at Piney Dam,
Some
that
catastrophic
level
event.
of fund balance would
One
not be
pump.
sufficient.
One pump without the install and without a valve on it is $100,000 now. That's just to get the pump. So
And the water surcharge fund historically has paid for maintenance and repairs
Yeah.
and projects west of the treatment plant. So the raw water dam, the hydro, the springs,
Transmission
the force
line.
main, and the dam, and everything associated with the dam. So one catastrophe on that force main, you need to have cash on hand to be able to fix it. You can't be going to the bank and asking for a loan. Sorry, continually.
So the recommendation would be to change the target fund balance policy for the water surcharge fund, instead of it being a percentage of operating expenses, to set a dollar amount as the target.
Do you have a recommendation for what that amount should be?
So potentially at least $1 million.
Okay.
Would you, does it need to be higher than that, Hayden?
no. No.
What is it
I
right now?
would,
Right now, we are close to that. We are at 953,000. So we are close to the target, if that becomes the new target.
not to get like into the weeds, but with the debt being paid down in the coming years and not wanting to prematurely change the rates lower to then have to increase them in other accounting to go elsewhere. My recommendation would be to set the range from like $1 to $2 million so that the auditor isn't coming back and saying, why are you still exceeding your fund balance recommendation? And that gives you till, next year to restructure your rates, but then your rate structure can keep in mind or take into consideration you have sufficient fund balance already and you're not trying to build that through your rate structure and then planning for the pay down of debt in 28. A significant pay down. There will still be a little bit of debt on the transmission line and the hydro plant, but the other Piney debt will be paid for in 28. So I would recommend $1 to $2 million.
Setting a range.
That gives you flexibility.
Assuming that nothing catastrophic happens between now and then, how long do you think it will take till we were over the $1 million mark? Is that something that will happen by the end of this year?
Based on the current budget, I wouldn't expect it to change significantly.
Okay.
Because because we budgeted pretty closely. I mean, we've had some repairs in the range of less than $50,000.
Okay.
On top of, the big debt payment comes in April every year.
Okay.
So we have semi-annual payments of interest, and then we have our annual payment of the interest and principal. And you will see that reflected in the April reports.
Okay.
But by the end of the calendar year, you'd be over.
We would be, yes, I would expect.
Probably
I would expect
at least
so.
at that $1 million mark. Okay.
So we would not have to change the target for the other funds,
Yeah.
but change it for the water surcharge fund.
Yeah.
So the surcharge then, that residents are charged, that would just remain the same even though we're paying down our debt in order to build up that fund to $1 million.
So a year ago, the rate was decreased when the one large debt, and it became the same for all customers except Eckerd. They have a special. So the rate already has been adjusted. So for the upcoming year, we anticipate maintaining the same water surcharge rate, $8.30 per unit per month, and then reevaluating that in the spring of 2026.
For Frostburg Water Department operations, my recommendation in terms of long-term water rate restructuring is there's like an internal accounting component of where the money we take in goes and how we account for that because of how we bill the county for their water. They have to agree that they're not paying to maintain our lateral lines to residents. That's where the water wars of the mid-2000s came from and the Public Service Commission got involved. So we need to, come up with a new water rate structure and formula that the county's happy with, that we can move away from that very complicated Public Service Commission formula. But B, it's my gut that water rates can be restructured for city residents, that less money is going to Piney and the water sources, but more money is going to Public Works to do preemptive repairs and proactive work within the distribution system. That rates to the customer will stay the same, but our internal accounting changes, that the distribution center system is being taken care of. But in some of the discussions with Lonoconee Water, I've done some math, and like for an 8,000 quarter customer, the city of Frostburg's water rates, including the surcharge, is half of that of Georges Creek, half of that for most county customers, not in the Frostburg system, but anywhere. So your rates are affordable when you're looking within Allegheny, very affordable looking within Allegheny County. I mean, my county water and sewer bill is greater than a Frostburg bill that includes garbage service. So.
Should move to Frostburg.
And knowing what the long-term needs of the county are going to be impacts how many customers are these fixed charges being distributed among.
Yeah.
Which is why we have asked the county to delay recalculation of any rate for this fiscal year because we don't have enough information to recommend a change.
When you have more customers, those fixed costs are spread out over more accounts,
Right,
which
yeah.
lowers
Per
a little
person,
bit per
per
household.
unit.
Maybe enough to cover that insurance that we're gonna.
So it's, there's a lot in motion, but without any firm answer on what Lonoconee's future is, it's very difficult to make any good recommendations to you with confidence right now.
Hopefully that'll be a little more clear by this time next week.
Greg?
Not likely.
Okay.
All right. Who said that? That wasn't me. All right.
Double your prayers.
Anything else on that?
So that would need to be a resolution.
That's
Just to before we get off that topic, on average, we spend about $250,000 a year on preventative upkeep maintenance in terms of our utility plans. So that's scheduled water line replacements, scheduled valve replacements, and incremental upgrades throughout the city to take out the aging infrastructure and put in new infrastructure. So what Elizabeth was talking about, that's about that $250,000 number.
Given that we have invested a lot of the ARPA funds into like valves and pumps and all that stuff, are you feeling pretty confident that, and then also the GIS mapping, are you feeling pretty confident about the structure and the investments that will be needed in the future?
Yeah, so the ARPA money got us to the point where we are no longer reactive.
Yeah.
So we took out all of the stuff that was a perpetual problem, except for Washington Street, which is a CSO job. So the ARPA money got us to the point where we are at a good operating level now, to where we can actually plan for preventative maintenance, get the 30-year-old stuff out of the ground. Next year we get the 31-year-old stuff out, etc. So I feel pretty good now. So yeah.
And then one more comment on the water surcharge fund. The other financial planning piece of that is, okay, you have your $1 to $2 million in reserves, but you need to build a new pump house in 25 years. Well, that's going to cost $1 billion. No,
Maybe.
but 2 million, whatever, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, or something happens with the dam wall. I mean, Chris had to build a bridge several years ago for some issue. But when it's things that you can plan for and know that are coming, and the interest rates we're seeing now, it's going to behoove, it will likely be in better interest of the city to do another low interest long-term loan through USDA than try to save the cash. But there's professionals out there that can help with those decisions too. But I'm not recommending to save enough money to build a new dam. It's just enough to something happens with that forest main, it needs to be fixed quickly and well. So, sorry I'm causing you lots of stress and knocking on wood over there.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Totally agree. All right, next, some contracts.
Yes. So again, this is all the Bureau of Mines stuff. So again, not our money, but we are managing the project. So we do need approval on the interior finishes contract. The low bid for that one came in at $41,843. That was Daystar Contracting, who we've worked with in the past. They did the child care center. They've done some work here. That is interior finishes. So that I would ask for an approval on that next week. And then the electrical contract for that building, the low bid was Stevens Electric at $22,725. That is actually below our procurement threshold of $25,000, to where as long as we go through our procurement process and acquire bids, it doesn't have to go to a formal agreement in front of the public. But I want to run it by the council and make sure that's okay before I cut them loose and go ahead. Again, both contractors we worked with in the past, and not our money. So if that's okay with you all, I would push for those. So with that being said, the electrical contract I would approve tomorrow, given that it's under the $25,000, and then the interior finishes contract we would approve next week in front of the public. So
You had me at not our money.
thanks.
The thing you don't get down is bond, B-O-N-D.
Right, yeah. BOM building. Yeah. All right, next, appointment to the Rec Commission.
So Brian asked for a resolution that would reappoint Mark Roque, Dottie Turner, and Sean White to 3-year terms to the Rec Commission. So they've all served in the past.
I've talked to 2 of them this past week, and
Okay.
they seem very interested, so.
Okay, the next one, sorry, history again. There's a few things on this agenda that it's like, Elizabeth, you've been here long enough. Let's clean it up before you leave. So, Pritchard Farms got started in the mid-2000s. Following the housing crisis, the developers defaulted, and the bank took ownership of the Pritchard Farms development. And then all the banks defaulted, and there was like, I don't know, a succession of banks that owned the Pritchard Farms development. Simultaneous to that is a zoning amendments were made after Pritchard Farms had stopped. When Pritchard Farms was developed, it was originally under a planned neighborhood development zoning overlay, which had a lot of stipulations in terms of open space, recreational amenities, who the homes were for, when the zoning ordinance was amended in 2014, the planned neighborhood development overlay still exists in the zoning ordinance, but it does not apply to Pritchard Farms. And a new zoning category of R4 is what Pritchard Farms is, which aligns with what Pritchard Farms' intent is. So, Brandon Reese eventually bought the Pritchard Farms development, Evergreen Associates, from the bank. And although I was part of these conversations, it wasn't, I don't remember the particulars of how it came about, but part of the deal was the bank gave the city $25,000 to develop the playground that was initially stipulated under that planned neighborhood development overlay zone. That playground was supposed to be built when the 20th unit in the regular single-family part of the subdivision was built. So this was contingent on the original developers, default, bankruptcy, So now here we are, Brandon Reese has revived the neighborhood, the homeowners association, the age-restricted part of the community's been dissolved. All the things that were outstanding and problematic 10 years ago regarding stormwater management, pond ownership, and common areas, that's all been taken care of with the homeowners association being reconstituted. So I always thought that was a weird word for it, but that's what they used. So anyway,
Like in that soup.
yes.
Make some water.
So Brandon Reese had gone to Allegheny County Commissioners directly and requested project open space funding to do recreational amenities, not in this little like island up on the right side that's just like in between a road, just a very small island. But he's, in working with the homeowners association, proposed like walking trails, dog park, and then like nice gazebo pavilion. There's very few children that live there. There's a lot of retired folks or people that use Pritchard Farms as a second home that are in the community. So the homeowners association and the owner of the development, Brandon Reese, has asked if the $25,000 can be released to him, to the Pritchard Farms development, to be used for these other recreational amenities rather than the playground. And with you could buy about a sliding board with $25,000 at this point in time. So I think, but Brandon had talked to me about that in the past, but now they finally just got word that the county's POS money for them has been approved, so he's in a position to move forward. But I think that should be a resolution that you approve that money being moved to a different type of amenity for the community.
Yeah, it sounds like it's gonna be a better use for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's recreation, and it's
Yeah.
just not a playground, and it's more suitable to the residents.
So it's currently in a CD, $27,428.68, so there would be a penalty on
Early withdrawal.
early closeout, but as long as the resolution just says that the bank's allowed to cut the check to whomever,
Okay.
that would be my request. so
Okay.
that we don't have to be the middle person, because it shows up as, a restricted resource.
What's the term on the CD?
I believe it was 12 or 13 months, but I don't remember the due date, the maturity date.
Well, if it's within 2-3 months from now, we just let it mature. Or if not, whatever ends up being.
Yeah, it just depends on how fast they need it.
Yeah, if they want it today, then fine.
Want it, or if they just want it at maturity.
I can coordinate with Brandon and just, yeah.
Yeah, I don't need to know that today. I was curious. Okay. All right, that'll work. More budget stuff.
So we're at that point of the year where we lay out the budget preparation schedule. Seems odd to do that when it's still January, but. So in early February, the department heads will be meeting with commissioners to discuss their department budgets. They will have those initial requests and submit those to me. In February, we will welcome your input on your priorities for the upcoming fiscal year and have a general discussion on tax and utility rates. At the February monthly city council meeting, we'll invite outside organizations who want to make requests of hotel motel revenue to submit their requests. All that leading up to in March, where we will come up with a draft budget. You'll be making the important decision of setting the real estate tax rate, as well as the personal property tax rates and utility rates and fees. So that by the time we come to April, we have initial consideration of the budget ordinance to be voted upon in May. So at this stage, be thinking of your priorities so that we can have a discussion of those. Your general sense of where you would like to consider rates, and await discussion from individual departments.
There's a note on the bottom regarding House Bill 101. I think we're fine and it would not require any changes, but that bill stipulates if it were to pass that you must set your tax rate prior to June 1. It currently says July 1 in state law. You always set your tax rate before June 1, but it doesn't go into effect until 20 days later. So the way the draft legislation reads, I think you're fine as long as you're setting that rate and communicating it.
Okay.
Just wanted to make you aware.
Okay.
And state law did change regarding the constant yield tax rate hearing, so you no longer have to have a public hearing if your tax rate stays the same. So that was always difficult meetings where your tax revenue increases because your assessable base increased because of new industry, and the way that constant yield public hearing ad read was you were increasing taxes. Well, you were increasing your revenue through taxes, but you were not increasing the tax rate. So that always led to public so that is no longer the case. I believe now the public hearing is required if you increase your tax rate.
Thank you. Chief, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Good afternoon, and thank you for the time to speak. We've had a request from our night shift supervisor for the mayor and council and the city administration to consider an increase to the night shift pay differential. So First Sergeant Curry contacted the city administration and the police administration. He had done some research on the differential rates, and I have notes here, if I could just read them. He contacted the sheriff's office. He found that their night shift differential was $1 an hour for deputies and $1.50 for senior deputies or supervisors. Cumberland City's night shift differential is $1.75 an hour, and FSU's is $1 an hour with an additional 75 cents per hour on weekends. So a little variation. Ours is currently 50 cents an hour. It's been that way for quite a long time, maybe 20 years, Commissioner Grove may recall offhand. So that is a request from the night shift crew. I support that request. And if the mayor and council would entertain that possibility, I would recommend that Elaine, Commissioner Grove, and I consult and come up with a proposed number, unless Commissioner Grove has a thought already on how to
Well,
handle it.
I think to keep up with everybody else, we need to go to at least $1, from 50 cents to $1. So, because now we're up with everybody, and it'll help keep our officers, especially on that night shift. And
Yes, sir.
yeah, I would think 50 cents to double it would be reasonable.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and the night shift officers do send their appreciation. The city, I mean, the mayor and council as a whole and the administration have done just enormous work in just the last few years to bring us up to speed with the other departments. So I appreciate the data they provided, and we appreciate all that you've done.
Just to do quick math, if you have 3 people working night shift, and if, let's just say you did $1.75, to put it up to what Cumberland's is, that's $441 a week. $22,932 a year. That's the max, $1.75. But that's only $21 a night for those working that night shift. So the 50 cent, like giving them $6 to work night shift's kind of a joke. That doesn't even pay for like cucumbers for So.
I guess question 1 would be, would the mayor and council consider entertaining an increase at all? If so, would you like us to proceed with a solid recommendation?
Yeah, I think go ahead and get something that's more solid.
Okay.
And yeah, we're certainly willing to consider that.
My recommendation would be Nick and Elaine work together and then come up with a recommendation to discuss with you in the budget preparation, so this would go in effect July 1.
Okay, sounds good.
If you could tell them to maybe write 1 or 2 more parking tickets a day to cover the expense. That would be helpful.
They're working at night.
Thank you all.
Nathan Curry probably earned his keep in illegal parking tickets.
He is an excellent enforcer, always very diligent.
So, okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Chief.
you,
Next
Mayor.
is a proposal for the Edwards Fund.
Oh, I saw that a little bit ago.
Yep.
Don't shoot the messenger.
This was foreseen. This was foretold, perhaps.
Okay, so Green Bench had applied to George Edwards funds for funding of their structural issues of their rehabilitation at the Diamond Building. Thank you. The George Edwards Fund representatives came back to the city and the county and said, you guys need to have skin in the game. And at that time, you agreed to allocate them $25,000. Since that time, the county did receive $250,000 of DHCD Community Development Grant. So if the Green Bench developers were to apply, they could apply for up to $100,000, I believe. That would help them leverage additional George Edwards funds after July 1 without the city having to contribute anything additional or be asked to contribute anything additional. Okay, so, however, Brandon Reese has submitted an application to the George Edwards Fund to rehab the Pritchard Building. The Pritchard Building, okay, so there's history here. The Pritchard Building has sat since 2009. When I started with the city in 2012, Donnie will remember this, Brandon had been awarded grant funds through the city, but from DHCD to do improvements at that time. Brandon was very slow to do the work, and to the point that we were getting backed into the corner by the grant agency of you're going to need to use it or lose it. So probably 2014, at a work session down at 59 East Main Street, the mayor and council said we're done with that building, no more. Well, and at the time I think Brandon was saying he had a $70,000 gap to finish that building. But now we're at like a $700,000 gap because of the world we live in. Okay, but also history, 2013 timeframe, the redesign for that building requires a stairwell in the center of the building that would access Alley 24, or Pritchard's Alley, because of the length of the building and the fire egress. There needs to be that central stairwell that comes in the middle of the alley. Brandon had requested to the mayor and council to close the alley. And timing worked out that we were able to get grant funding from the county through the Metropolitan Planning Organization funding to do a traffic study. So hired a traffic consultant, they came in, they recommended closing the alley. We had a public hearing. Everyone that lived on Yule and Welsh Street came to the public hearing. It was a very good meeting, but the input influenced the mayor and council at that time to not close the alley, but there was an agreement that when the Pritchard building was rehabbed, that from the halfway point where this stair tower is up to Main Street, a barely ADA compliant sidewalk, minimally compliant sidewalk could be constructed in the alley with bollards that still would allow vehicular passage. Wouldn't be comfortable, but it could happen. So, fast forward, Brandon Reese applies to the George Board, and guess what the George Board does? Hey city, where's your $25,000? However, I think...
Okay, I found this on the web for where's your $25,000. Check it out.
Does she have any money?
Where is it, Siri?
She found it.
She knows where it is. Oh, sorry. She's going to be answering on all of our phones here directly. Okay. Oh, my. So, caveat number one with the George Edwards Fund request for the Pritchard building, the county, and I believe the city, should not consider any funding to that project until the Hill Street School project is done. Because that has been going on for what feels like a decade, but it's probably close to it. It's more than 7 years.
Yes,
So,
I remember. Did he just get a $750,000 grant for
Yeah,
out here,
He
Pritchard
did.
Building?
yeah.
he did, but there's still a gap. I haven't looked at his pro forma, I haven't seen it. The county has not agreed to this. But the suggestion that Brandon made that I wanted to bring to you, I guess because of the George Board is going to be looking for this at some point, that might be a little more palatable than just putting $25,000 into that building, is putting $25,000 into the construction of that sidewalk. So, as that would be a public amenity, but then the George Board, I think, would count that as their match. So,
Can it be done for that much?
no, it would just be contributions similar to what you did at Hill Street.
He's gonna, how much is he asking the George Board for the Pritchard building?
I don't even know.
Because that's gonna need how many million? I mean, it's like totally gutted.
It's gutted but rebuilt inside. Like, he has floors on the top floor and the next floor. The main floor, the reason there's no storefront is there's a gaping hole and there's nothing for the storefront to sit upon. But the upper floors, he did his, what's that concrete construction with the foam? There is real floors there and some framing that's been completed. So it's not like a burnt out shell. There is
Mhm.
work was done 10 years ago. The new windows,
Mhm.
with the stickers, it'll probably never come off,
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
but
Yeah, I agree. We're not doing anything until Hill Street's done.
Yeah.
would you feel comfortable with me conveying to Brandon and the George Board that the sidewalk cost share up to $25,000 would be something you would consider when the Hill Street School is done?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The way you just said it, yes.
Okay. I will convey that, and I will copy Hayden and Lydia and the mayor on that email. Very good.
Is, the Mountain City,
Don't know.
okay.
Don't know. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. All right, next item. I think this has been circulated. Does everybody have this?
No, it's all right here.
Okay.
Wow, sorry.
So this is the tentative timeline for the recruitment and hiring process for the new city administrator. So as we've talked about previously, January 31st will be Elizabeth's last day, and then at that time, Saturday, February 1st, Hayden will assume the title of acting administrator, and Lydia will assume the title of acting deputy administrator, with duties that we've already kind of discussed, but we can discuss again. Sort of the outward-facing part of the role will be in Hayden's purview, and the internal control, the internal-facing role will be more in Lydia's purview. So today, we are discussing this at great length. Later this week, so probably Thursday when we leave for Pace, we can get the official job posting on the website, which is on the second page, sort of the description, what the posting's about, and we can talk about if we want to massage any of that language. We'll get that posted on the city's website and various other places where professionals will go to look for jobs. And the proposed cutoff for acceptance of applications is March 7th, so that will be 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It'll be about 7 weeks that we would accept applications. The cutoff for that would then be Friday, March the 7th. So the following week, we talked last month about appointing a committee of individuals from town to sort of look through the applications and serve as a review committee. We've talked to most of those folks. We can talk to the rest of them. Have that committee meet sometime during that week to review the applications and whittle it down to a short list for us to consider. And then the week after that, which would be the week of our March mayor council meeting, we could schedule interviews at some point during that time frame, during the end of March, second half of March. Conduct interviews, and then in our April council meeting, following the public meeting, have a closed session to talk about our candidate and choose one, hopefully, by that time. Make the offer, do all the legal stuff, and then depending on who we choose and what their needs are, have them start sometime in late spring or hopefully by the summer. So, some other things we need to talk about at the bottom of the list. Things that we'll just have to consider based on who the applicant is, if we're willing to pay any kind of fees or expenses for moving, if it's somebody from out of the area. What we're going to do from here on out. So, I don't have. You saw this because
Yeah.
you read it. You're the one that did the editing. So maybe it would behoove us to start there. Let's start on the second page. So just a description of what the city is, what the role of the administrator is, sort of how commission form of government works, qualifications. I think this is all stuff that you pulled directly from your application, wasn't it?
It's just a more elaborate version of what was used in 2019. In terms of just reducing the administrative burden, we implemented the NeoGov software here for the HR hiring and onboarding process. So people now apply online using the NeoGov platform. Part of NeoGov puts the jobs any job that we advertise out on governmentjobs.com, we've seen other job websites like mininggovernmentjobs.com. So Indeed, I think, has like, they'll take job postings and put it on their site at no cost to the city. And then the applications are submitted through there. If there's questions that you want a candidate to answer as part of the application process, they can be added if there's certain qualifications that self-screen people out. All of that can be done, and then interviews can be scheduled through that. So I'm telling you all that because Trevor's your man. He has done, Nick can attest to the professionalism and efficiency, and prevented Nick and I from making mistakes along the way of dropping the ball, because the software and then Trevor staying on top of it just streamlined everything. So I'm trying to provide, I guess, a little bit of comfort that the administrative burden is generally handled through NeoGov, and you can coordinate with Trevor on that.
Okay. So, I mean, I know that this was just put in your hands, but is there anything that stands out or anything that we've forgotten? Okay. All right, we'll keep this as our timeline then, and we can get this posted tomorrow or Thursday. Get this posted before we go to Annapolis. All right.
Do you have any questions or concerns, Trevor? I'm sorry, Mayor.
Because my only thing is any like screening questions it's best to have before the job's posted, because if someone applies and no questions are added, then we miss the opportunity to get questions from that applicant.
That's true.
So any questions like, is relocation assistance required, or can you schedule, or can you attend an in-person interview? Like, I don't know. Just any questions that might be asked, it's best to have it before it goes live.
Okay. Let's, well, we'll say by Thursday, between now and Thursday, if we think of any questions, just send them Trevor's way. Yeah. So tonight or tomorrow, or we'll come up with some questions. Okay.
You probably have already some like those two.
Yeah, okay.
You want three references?
3 references, that's good. CV, personal statement, whatever else.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Should we have something in there that a background investigation will be done?
You didn't background check me, you credit screened me.
Well, I think maybe we should go, we knew you. You know,
Did you know?
well, let me tell you, when I was working, we had a guy apply for the job over at Frost Village and seemed super on it, but when we did a criminal background investigation, found that he had committed several felonies that we didn't know about. And again, we can go back to Cumberland. Cumberland hired a guy that had several felonies in Florida that they didn't know about, that he worked there, right?
Sounds a bit green.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
That would be a good idea.
I don't think it would be out of bounds to do a background.
Credit check, background check.
Background and credit check required.
Do you not want a fraudster?
All right, credit check, background check.
Now you're just wondering what you missed on me.
She lives in LaVale, but I don't
know all
think she's
your
selling.
secrets. I know where you live.
So
Somebody else told me.
I knew who provided your water.
All right, credit check, background check. If you think of any kind of open-ended questions to add, send those to Trevor in the next day or two. Okay. Anything that we've forgotten?
There's your special work session on the 28th.
Yes, oh, yes. So next week is council meeting. The Tuesday after that, we're having a special work session with Rich Reinhardt to talk about what's happening in Annapolis.
I have one that just came through too. Just to add to your calendars, I will have more following up in the next week, but to add to your calendars, March 26th, Leadership Allegheny does a group project every year. The group project this year is a rehabilitation simulator for people going through the rehab process where they're just getting out of prison process for local individuals, and they want to target local elected officials or people in positions of power to implement change within the community. They were hoping to get some representatives from the city of Frostburg, and that if you can't go, that you possibly send someone from your staff in your stead. So March 26th at 5 o'clock at Allegheny College, and I will have a formal letter and a full write-up for you in the upcoming week.
Like rehab training?
A simulator, basically.
Simulator.
So say you're just getting out of prison, you're addicted to drugs, how does it look in terms of taking advantage of public spaces to get your license, find a birth certificate if yours is gone, how to get a job, how to go through the rehab process, how to go to your court hearings, how to do all that without a car, without a house, without your documentation, to show people what the process is like. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can make that happen. All right. Anything else on that side of the table? Tony?
Nope.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
That's funny. Well, like I say, that